Susay at the Aknia. Welcome to Khmer Voices, where we shine a spotlight on the achievements of the Cambodian diaspora around the world. I'm your host, Vani, aka Vanny. This is the last episode of 2025. It's the holidays coming up, and your host needs a little break too. And I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts as much during the break, but if you do and you haven't listened to the episodes that I've recorded, last year, maybe go back and listen to those. You'll see that I hopefully have improved. But I'm going to end the year with someone I've admired for a while. Again, I admire all my guests. That's why I want them to come on the podcast, because they provide a lot of inspiration. But this lady, wow, Sophaline Mao, she is everywhere. She's involved in 3 nonprofits, and we're obviously going to be talking about that. But we do cover her upbringing. Her family settled in Seattle first, but then moved to Dallas, and then to Stockton, to Long Beach, and then back to Stockton. So we covered that, and we covered her experience. And then we talked about her career, how she was able to just pivot. So if you are in that in-between stage, I think it's going to be a good episode to listen to. And if you know someone who's kind of going through that as well, don't hesitate to share it with them. They don't have to be quiet to listen to this podcast, right? Even if you're not trying to pivot or trying to figure out what it is that you want to do next, she has quite an inspiring story. So it'll be a good listen regardless. So, Pauline, you are like a chameleon. And based on what I've heard from your episodes with Chad from Khmer Tree and your own podcast, you've done so much and you've reinvented yourself. But I want to learn more about your upbringing. Who influenced you? What life was like growing up? Because I know that your family started American life in Seattle, but it sounded like you moved around down to Southern California and Northern California. And yeah, just give me the lowdown. Let's start from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, so everyone, and Vani, thank you so much. I was born in Khao Dang, and so when you think about how we all started in life, I think many of us in the diaspora, just like yourself, we either started in Cambodia or in Khao Dang refugee camp, and then we found our second home, right, somewhere else in one of the Western nations. So I arrived in Seattle, Washington in 1980 with my parents, Matpa, and Ye, my grandmother. And so I was like 5 months old. And so everyone's always like, oh, you were born in Khao Dang refugee camp. What was that like? I'm like, I don't have any memory of it. I have photos, I'm sure like many of us, but yeah, just like other Cambodian American families, we do secondary migration, and I'd say a big part of that is economic opportunity, family reunification, or even just to be surrounded by the Khmer community. And so my parents were in Seattle. They were like, it's too cold. It's too rainy. And so we ended up in, funny enough, Dallas, Texas, because my aunt and uncle had arrived in the US in 1975, and they were like, hey, come here. There's manufacturing jobs. And so sure enough, we loaded up the station wagon and ended up in Dallas. My brother was born there, and then my parents were there for a few years. My grandma passed away, and 1986, my parents were like, all right, we don't have support here. We need someone to help with the kids, because by that time they had 2 kids. And then, Vanny, we ended up in Stockton, California. So shout out to my 209 Stockton Cambodians here. We landed in Stockton 1985, and I started kindergarten, and I would have to say, I'm a Stockton girl, and that's where I grew up, kindergarten through high school.
So did you know any Cambodians before you made the move to Stockton? Or your family?
Yeah. So, it's funny because a lot of times, and many of us probably listening are thinking how did my parents end up where they are? Yes, it was my dad's friends. They were like, hey, come here. And what attracted my parents to Stockton, Vanny, was really just the climate, to be honest. The Northern California climate and the fact that there was already a somewhat established Khmer community in Stockton. My parents wanted to be around other Khmers and also have us as their kids like grow up around the community.
And what was life like there?
Life was so much fun. I think looking back at my childhood, I would have to say that it was full of adventure. It obviously, as many of us growing up in that era, this was like the 90s. And so many of us were trying to find our identity, like in high school, especially like, who's my clique? Do I hang out with this group versus that group? But, my upbringing, I'd have to say, Vanny, was really incredible. And I really have to credit that to my mom and dad, ma and pa. They sacrificed so much so that my brothers and I could really just have a somewhat thriving childhood. We didn't grow up with a lot of wealth. My dad was an office janitor. And so he had this janitorial service where pa would go and clean offices for these companies. And I remember as a little girl going with him, Vanny, and helping him empty waste baskets. And I learned they're like, oh, like this is what pa does at work, right? But I didn't feel a sense of like shame or anything. I was like so proud. I was like, oh, okay. And then my mom, because by that time there were 3 of us. So my mom actually stayed at home and she was I call her the chief operations officer of our house. Matt was our Uber driver. At the time, we didn't have Uber back then. Matt was our driver. She was our cook. She was our tutor. Like, she made sure that we stayed on track, Vanny. And I have to thank her so much for that sacrifice, because when she arrived in the US, she was only like 22. So she could have built a career and, like achieved all these dreams. But her dream was really like, I just need to make sure my kids turn out okay. So that's essentially kind of how I was brought up.
You mentioned in one of your episodes that your grandmother helped raise you. Well, you mentioned that just now as well until she passed away. So she wasn't with you in California.
No, Ye had passed away and she's laid to rest in Carrollton, Texas, right outside of Dallas. So no, she didn't. Yeah. And then by the time my parents arrived in Stockton in 1985, they had my second brother. And then my mom was like, all right, that's it. She told my dad, she's like, go my 3 kids, I'm done. She's like, this is America. So they stopped at 3 of us.
Yeah. And did you have a village to support your family there?
Yeah. Talk about every kid, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And you're absolutely right. I think the Stockton community, we had about 6 or 7 families that lived in this kind of block of each other. And growing up in Stockton, as I was sharing with you, was the cool part was that you could claim like a hood that you lived in, So depending on where your family settled, like you would claim like, oh, I'm, they're like all these different like street names, right? And so you would claim your identity based on the street that you lived on. And our neighborhood, Vanny, we didn't have like a large village, but we had, I'd say probably like 6 or 7 families that we regularly saw. And many of them were like the bong bong, like the older ones that came and maybe graduated high school and like ended up going to university. And so they were my bongs, because I'm the oldest in my family. So they were essentially like my, I guess you could say role models, because I grew up around them and I saw them go to school and graduate high school. And then I remember being a little girl like, oh, like I want to go to high school prom, like back in the 80s when they had like the big like Aquanet hair and everything. And I really admired them so much because they really like excelled, and they were the first pioneers. So that was kind of like my village.
So you saw older Cambodian girls go to prom. You didn't have to break the ice. You're just like, Ma, I'm going to prom. And you didn't have to explain yourself. Yeah. She knew exactly what that was. Okay.
They knew. Yeah, they knew. And there wasn't a bad stigma, I guess. I know that a lot of my girlfriends growing up in high school, they did have a hard time because their parents heard all these horror stories about what happens on prom night. And so it was a fear-based thinking. But I have to say, Vanny, I was so grateful that my ma and pa, they trusted me. And I think as my parents, like, your kids. You know what I mean? Like, you know, your kids, like, you know, if they're up to something, or if you know, like, hey, like, I trust my kid. And so I'd have to say I grew up, my parents gave me a lot of trust, and I always knew that. And I always valued that. And I never, ever wanted to, like, you know, break that trust.
Was education something that they really instilled in you?
Yes, it was like 100% instilled. It was hammered in from a very, very young age. You know, my parents actually, they are both, as we say in Khmer, like Nam Ping. So it means like Phnom Penh people, like they're city people. And so my parents grew up before the Khmer Rouge, with education. Like my mom was like, you know, she went to school. Her father, my grandfather, was working for the Ministry of Finance at the time. And so my parents all kind of were city people, and they grew up in the city. And they had, you know, at the time they had to learn French because that was kind of like the second language there. So coming here, Vanny, it was like, it wasn't even a question. It was like a non-negotiable. It was like, no, you're going to school and going to university and going to college. It wasn't even like an afterthought. It was like expected.
I think you mentioned when you decided to go to school, you didn't want to stay home. You wanted to go away. What was that like?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I was 18, I think, 18, 19. And, you know, like here in the US, just like in Canada, your senior year of high school, you start preparing for college. And so I was so lucky to have gone to like a really great public school in Stockton, and they had career counseling. They had a career center. And so I was like, okay, I want to go to like UCLA and like USC. I wanted to go away for college because, you know, like growing up as a teenager in America, you watch these movies, right? And so you think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go off to college. I'm going to like do all this fun stuff. And it was tough. Like the conversation I remember having with my parents was like, number one, they're like, oh, you're going sarai. Like, oh, you're a daughter. Like, you know, you don't live away from your parents until you're married. Okay. That was one thing, that they were a bit traditional. They had all these fears, right? What happened to my daughter? Like, oh my gosh, she's going to start dating. She's going to start meeting boys. And what happens if, you know, they lead her astray and her future's ruined? I mean, that was like their fear. And then I think, and then also too, like realistically, financially, you know, obviously, like, as I shared with you, Vanny, like growing up with very humble financial beginnings, like my parents were like, well, we didn't know what a college savings fund was. We have two of your brothers that we still have to take care of. So they just told me, they said, you know, go on, if you want to go, you're going to have to figure it out. Like, ma and pa, we do not have the financial means to help you. And I wanted to go to San Francisco. And San Francisco at the time still is one of the, you know, it's a little bit more expensive. It's a big city. And so, you know, of course, this was like 20 years ago, but ma and pa were like, you know, oh, San Francisco, Tlaya, you know, like it's too expensive. How are you going to pay for tuition? You know, bong tlai sala, and, you know, your rent. And so they were more fearful that financially they couldn't do it, Vanny. But, you know, I just made it happen. It's like, let me go, ma and pa. I was like, just let me go. I will figure it out. And you know what? They embraced it. And so I ended up going to San Francisco State University, and pa helped me load up my stuff from my dorm. It was so cute, Vanny. I wish at the time, you know, obviously this was like 1999. We didn't have like iPhones and cameras and stuff, but I'm telling you, Vanny, it was one of those moments where it was sad for them because they were moving me out, but the pride that they had of like, you know, getting on my bedding and then like meeting my roommate, seeing my dorms, and then my dad, oh my God. Okay, I just share this really quick. Pa was so shocked that I was on a co-ed floor. And he's like, in Khmer, he's like, oi, min pro nơiជាមួយđượcដែរ. And I was like, oh, like basically he was like, oh my God, there's guys. And I was like, yeah, pa. I was like, I remember telling him, I was like, yeah, pa, boys go to college. And he's like, oh, you know, because he thought, I guess in his mind, right? I didn't mention that to him. I guess in his mind, Vanny, he was thinking it was like an all girls like dorm. Yeah. And then when he saw like these dudes like rolling in, he's like, oh, you know, he's like, where's the girls' bathroom and where's the guys' bathroom? Anyway, so cute. But yeah, they were so happy to have like have me moved in, and they were so proud.
I want to park it right there because I want to continue that story. But I just remembered something that you shared in another episode. And I believe it was when your husband was interviewing you. You mentioned that in your childhood, I don't know I forget how old you were, but you had experienced your first drive-by.
Oh,
you said first, so I'm assuming that there were others.
And only.
Oh, first and only. Okay.
No, first and only, thank goodness.
What happened?
No, so, in the 90s, so between like 1991, 1993, 94, my parents, again, talking about like secondary migration, they moved to Long Beach. And so we were in Long Beach, California, it's Cambodia town and we love Long Beach. But in the early 90s, it was cray. It was cray. It was rough. This was like, and then my parents, like they didn't do their research because back then, like, there's no Google. There's no, like, let me Google this address. Literally, Vanny, they were like, oh, okay, we'll just move to this place and that place. And we were the only Khmer family in like a predominantly African American neighborhood. And we were like in this part of Long Beach that we see in a lot of the like media, the stereotypical
like
kind of
boys
media,
in the hood sort of neighborhood.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And we were the only Khmer family. And then maybe there's like one other Khmer family, but they were like these like duplexes and there was like the houses in the back and they were like multi-family units. But my parents had moved there for like, economic opportunity. And they were like, okay, Long Beach has a Khmer community. The climate is like SoCal weather and all this stuff. So yeah, we were like playing outside. We were playing hide and seek. And then Ba was, I don't know if like other people could like their dads had like this feather duster, get bahlan, like dust the car. So he was outside like bahlan. And then all of a sudden we just hear like pop, 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 pop. And then, as kids, we're like, oh, what do we do? And then Bob was like, get down. He's like, get up, Joe, get down, kids, And obviously we were not the targets. It was actually our neighbors across the street. But I just remember this like screeching sound. And I remember it so vividly. The car just like, he went in reverse and all you hear is just like pop, 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 pop. And then we're like, oh, and then of course, obviously the police come later and, we're kids. And so my mom makes us all go inside the house. And then like the police are like asking my dad, what did he see and stuff. But, Khmer, we didn't want to share too much, right? Because they were scared of retaliation. And so, yeah. But anyway, that was like a memory growing up in Long Beach. And then I think after that, like not too long was like the LA riots. And then I think after that, my parents were like, okay, I think we're done with like Long Beach now. And so they actually moved us back to Stockton.
Oh my God.
And so this was probably like 5th, 6th, 7th grade. And so I remember in Long Beach finishing up 5th grade and then going to middle school. I guess in America, we have like middle school. I don't know if you guys do that in Canada, but yeah, we had middle school. So it was like 6th and 7th grade. And then I ended up back in Stockton. And the super cool part was that we actually moved back into our old neighborhood, Vanny. So my friends that I had from childhood were still there.
You didn't have to make new friends.
It was like as if, yeah, I didn't have to make new friends, but it was as if nothing had happened except for like 3 years of my life, not seeing them. But the beauty of that was being able to then finish out high school.
Yeah.
Because I think my parents, that was one thing is they said, if we move, we need to move before high school, because that's usually when the kids, you can kind of map, how they're going to turn out. I don't know. That's what they thought.
When you were in Long Beach, were your parents concerned about your safety, especially after the drive-by shooting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So from then on, they would drive us to school. So we were like the inner city school kids that got bussed in. And so the schools that we went to were actually in another part of Long Beach, Valley, that was considered a bit more like privileged, better academics. But we were like we were basically like, can I say like the ghetto kids? Like we were the kids from the ghetto being bussed in. So there was a little bit of like that stigma. So it was like me, my brothers, and then obviously we grew up in a, brown and black community. And so those are my friends on the bus going to school.
Oh, wow. And it sounded like you were one of the only Asians then.
Yeah, I had other Khmer friends, but then they came from other parts of Long Beach because Long Beach is the largest concentration of Khmers in America, and so I had so many Khmer friends, but I just didn't know them because Long Beach was so huge. But I got bussed in with the neighbors, the kids from the neighborhood.
And so you made Khmer friends, and obviously other ethnicities and races in your school. Okay,
absolutely. So I mean, like growing up. I had friends from all different cultural, ethnic, diverse backgrounds. So for me, it wasn't anything, it wasn't anything like scary when I went to San Francisco.
Yeah. And so it helped you later on in life to be exposed to different backgrounds like that. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to your university year when you're in residence. How did you make that happen? If your parents weren't able to support you, like how did you support yourself through those university years?
Yeah. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. This was like 2000. So like, oh my gosh, 25 years ago, but there was financial aid. And so you would apply for federal aid here, Betty. So in the US, we had like, obviously there's federal student loans, there were grants, and then California had educational grants. And they also had this program, which I don't know if it still exists, but it was called the Educational Opportunity something, I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically a grant for first, like if you were first in your family to go to college, or if you came from what they called an underserved community, or socioeconomically disadvantaged community. And so I basically, Vanny, I'm telling you, I applied for everything. Scholarships. I'm like, oh, I'm first in my family to go to college. Oh, yeah, I'm from an underserved community. So
how did you learn about them?
Just found financial aid office. Just at school, I would go meet with the financial aid counselor. And at the time, it was really just finding a way to like pay for your tuition, books, really just like the dorms also too. And of course, the cost of living like 25 years ago isn't as crazy as it is today. But I worked 3 jobs, and I know we want to like focus on career, but yes, I started working 3 jobs while doing my undergraduate. I worked at like the Nordstrom's. I was selling handbags. There was a shopping mall next to San Francisco State University called Stonestown Galleria. I sold handbags, and then I also worked at the Hard Rock Cafe on weekends, and then I found a job on campus. So when I look back, I'm like, how did I do it? Like doing a full load of classes. And here in the US, full load is like 12 units or more, which is essentially like 4 classes a semester. And then I worked 3 jobs. So I just hustled. I don't know.
Like how many hours a week would you work?
I just on campus, you could only do, I think it was like 15 or 20 hours, like max. And then I would do Hard Rock Cafe like Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, because I was a hostess at Hard Rock Cafe, San Francisco. And then Nordstrom would be like weeknights. And so it was almost like a full-time job. And then I just found time to like balance like studying, obviously, research papers and projects and things like that.
Yeah. But, so there's working.
I finished
like your social life plus your studies.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned that you were in a sorority too. Like, how did you?
I was in a sorority.
How did you pack that all in? I'm just trying to understand. Like, did you sleep?
It was. No, probably I did. Lots of all-nighters for sure, because sometimes I would like close a shift at like, Nordstrom, like you close the store and then you get home and then I'm like, oh my God, I feel like an assignment or like a lab report due. So I would do a lot of all-nighters, but you just make it happen, Vanny. I look back now and I, again, when you're younger, like I was 19, maybe 20, you don't have a lot of responsibilities.
Right.
It literally it was like, your job was to get school done and you had to do it by any means possible.
Yeah. 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 I know everything seems a lot easier in hindsight now when I think about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I think I slept enough, but
right?
I did work a lot too during my university years. Wow. And how did you, so after university, what did you study in university?
Yeah. So I told this is another twist to the story. I told The only way to get them to agree, Vanny, was that I was going to be a doctor. Oh my God, go niyo mo rin pet. You know, that was all they like.
Did they ever ask you, like, couldn't you do that at your local school?
They did. They tried to keep me closer. They're like, oh, how about UC Davis? Or how about like University of the Pacific? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go to San Francisco. So I was a bio major the first, I'd say 2.5 years. And those, I'm telling you, those like physiology, biochem, organic chem classes kicked my butt, Manny, kicked my butt. And then I realized that I don't know if this is for me. And so like I changed my major, and my dad, did not talk to me. He did not talk to me for like months, like 3-4 months. He was so disappointed. I ended up getting my bachelor's in Asian American Studies, which was like, at the time, it was like the College of Ethnic Studies. And San Francisco State had historically been known for a college that really advanced ethnic studies in 1965. And so it was really strong in like African American studies, Latina, they call it La Raza at the time, La Raza studies, American Indian, and then they had Asian American studies. And my dad was like, you already Asian in America. Why? He's like, going, why? Why do you need to know about your history? We're already Asian. So, you know, but you know what? He showed up at my graduation.
Yeah.
He came and he watched me walk. Yeah, he was proud. I mean, I got a bachelor's. I didn't, you know, it wasn't in bio.
Were you the first in your family?
College. Yes, the first. And it was a big moment for my parents. And this was like 2004. And basically, I just had to get a job. Because the student loans, you know, here in America, I don't know, like if it's in Canada, you get 6 months of a grace period. So after you finish, the government gives you 6 months and then repayment starts. Okay. And so my parents were like, they're like, what are you going to do? Tarokangya, you know, go get a job. And I had moved back to Stockton. And that was a really tough journey for me because I had all this freedom living in San Francisco. And then, you know, when you move back with your Khmer parents, you're under their roof. So you need to respect their rules. And so my parents were still very conservative. They were like, you know, curfew, like, you know, you know, don't go out at night. And like, they were just like very strict. And then I found that as a 24-year-old to be very stifling. And we oftentimes like got into arguments, and it just created this really like not good environment. I love my parents so much, Vanny, but to fight with them every day just because I wanted to go and like hang out with friends, you know, and then come home, like it was just. And then I moved back to San Francisco because I'm like, you know what, Bama, I love you. Thank you for taking me in. And I found a transfer, and I ended up just moving back out again.
So what were you doing? What were you doing in Stockton career wise? Were you still looking for a job at that time? And then when you got a job, you moved back to San Francisco?
Yeah. So I ended up working for Wells Fargo. So Wells Fargo took me in as like a brand new grad. And I have like so many of my friends still that we started our jobs there. And and I found a transfer. So basically I stayed at Wells Fargo in Stockton, and I got a transfer to San Francisco, and then got a room. A lot of my friends, obviously, they were like, hey, we got a room. And it was like a house full of like my college friends, which probably didn't help much, you know, because it's just like partying after college again. But I had a full-time job.
Yeah. What were you doing there?
Yeah. I was a personal banker. And so I got to know the financial services business. So I was a banker, and then eventually worked my way up to home mortgage, which was like doing home mortgages. And thankfully, this was right before the 2008 global economic crash. So I stayed with Wells Fargo until then. And then once the economic crash happened, everyone kind of scattered. And then I found myself in biotech. And again, this is about reinvention. You know, sometimes you get forced into it, Vani, right? So when we're talking about career journeys, sometimes you voluntarily make a career switch, and sometimes you have no control. Like who knew, right? Like who knew in 2008, the world was going to have this global economic crisis. I don't know if you guys had it bad in Canada.
Yeah. It wasn't as bad, but we did feel it. Yeah.
You did feel it. Yeah. And here in the US, like it was bad. So I ended up in biotech. I ended up in pharmaceuticals because pharmaceuticals was still obviously needed, right? People still need their drugs. I mean, legal drugs, people still needed their treatments. And so a lot of the biotech, biopharma companies were still doing good. And so I ended up there and I just reinvented myself.
How did you make that transition from banking to pharmaceuticals or biotech?
Well, here's another thing about so here's another thing about career is like your network. You never burn bridges. You network, because you never know, like, that next career opportunity is from someone that you know. And sure enough, it was someone in my network. And then we ended up at Novartis Pharmaceuticals. And there I learned quality assurance, Vanny. And here's okay. So this is like how my bio, remember how I told you, like, I told my parents I was going to do bio. So I took a lot of the bio classes. So I did. So I remember like showing them my transcripts, like, hey, yeah, like, I took organic chem and I took microbiology. I took physiology and anatomy. So they were like, oh, okay. So you do have some science background. And then I had all these transferable skills. I could write well. And so you know what they did? They stuck me in, it was like the manufacturing quality assurance. So it's that department that writes reports of like 100,000 vials of drugs, right? If something goes wrong during manufacturing, I had to like suit up in this like super like, sanitary suit, go in, investigate, okay, what happened? And then you write a report. And the FDA and the European regulation or regulatory bodies, look at it. So anyway, I was able to kind of like use my transferable skills. And then I ended up staying there for a few years.
Oh, wow.
And then I found my way to like another pharma company. And then from there, I ended up in like sales operations. And so it wasn't like you're in the manufacturing floor, but now I was part of the commercial group. So these are the people that are like selling the drug after it's been approved by our FDA. And so I got to see what like sales was like and marketing and sales operations and product marketing. I think I was there for like 7 years. But I learned so much, Vanny.
Yeah. So just going back to your network, when you're transitioning from banking to pharmaceuticals, did you feel lost? Like, were you just telling everybody like I needed a job and that's how you got into pharmaceuticals?
Yeah. You just ask around. And I think everybody at the time, and sometimes people know, they're like, hey, banking, everyone's losing their jobs. And I think that's kind of when like the opportunities come about. Right. And then you also have to like search. And so I'm thinking back then if like LinkedIn was around somewhat, but it's not the LinkedIn that we know today. It was kind of like a more basic, like, hey, let's just put your resume online. Yeah. And then you start looking at like, oh, like what other companies are out there. And so I think I just also seeked opportunity. And another thing too is to share with everyone is that what you're capable of. If you feel like your growth is stunted and you are beating down doors, trying to advance in your current company, and sometimes you have to look outside that company. And essentially, Vanny, that was what I did. I was like, I cannot be in manufacturing. This is not me. Because you couldn't. It was so strict. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I got I got the experience I needed. And so going into like more of the commercial side, I felt like was a more better fit for me. And I stayed there. And this was 7 years. And there I got to travel to like Sydney and Bermuda, and I got to go to all these national sales meetings, global sales meetings. And that kind of gave me like a bug and like, hey, I could travel for work and this is what it's like.
And how did you end up at Salesforce?
Yeah. So at Salesforce, I ended up there through, again, a network, right? So just through your personal connections. And one of my friends, she was there and she had reached out and she was like, hey, she's like, you're in sales operations, right? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, hey, my senior VP is looking for someone in sales ops. And she was like, she was like, hey, send me your resume and I'll make sure it goes straight to him. And that's it, Vanny. She literally fast tracked my resume straight to the senior VP. And of course you have to have like the qualifications, and you have to have the experience as well. But this was like 2010, and I was already feeling like, all right, what else can you do, girl? Like, you already got this. And then another thing too was 2010, I actually got into grad school. So I was like 30 years old. I'm like, all right, well, I'm 30. Like, I'm not getting married. I'm not starting a family. It's all about me. And I was just in this period of like, again, reinvention. I'm like, I'm going to reinvent myself. And so I got into grad school, and then it worked out that like Salesforce was also like in downtown San Francisco, Vanny. So it worked out, and I went through 3 rounds of interviews, and then I got hired.
Oh, wow. And that brought you to Asia as well. Because I remember you saying that you did some work in Singapore and in Phnom Penh too. You saw some opportunities in Phnom Penh.
Absolutely. Vanny, I'm telling you, you never know what opportunity is there. You just have to like stay alert. I guess you just have to stay alert. But yes, so I stayed at Salesforce in San Francisco, which was our global headquarters for 5 years. And there I was in the global revenue operations department, which is kind of like a form of sales ops. And then so I did a lot of training of our sales teams, and I did a lot of just more the we call revenue ops, when you think about it, it's like the engine of a company, right? Because if you don't have revenue, you don't have a business, right? Yeah. So I had such an amazing opportunity. I had great mentorship there. Also, I finished my 2 graduate degrees while at Salesforce, and Salesforce actually did tuition reimbursement. So I'm like, all right, if I'm going to invest myself in this company, I'm going to make myself better. And that's another thing I want to share with everyone. Always, always, always invest in yourself. And so I got my master's in Asia Pacific Studies because I'm like, hey, I got this Asian American Studies undergrad degree. What am I going to do with it? So I got a master's in Asia Pacific Studies. But the difference is that this was more focused on the region, whereas my undergrad was focused on our diaspora, like the Asian diaspora in America. This was now, all right, you're going to learn about the geopolitical stuff of like Japan and Korea and like, China and like Southeast Asia. And that, Vanny, gave me the bug to be like, oh, I think I can work in Asia. And then I got my second master's was an MBA, right? Everyone has to get an MBA when you're in like these corporate companies because it gives you the foundation that you need to be in business. And so I got my MBA in 2014. I was done. And then 2016, I had an amazing opportunity to go to Singapore. And again, that's through networking. I had a fellow Asian American woman leader at Salesforce, and she was my champion, and she believed in me, and she was like, we've got this opportunity. And so I moved to Singapore in 2016. And there I managed the Salesforce partner ecosystem. And so there was about 350 Salesforce partners in region. And so I managed the Asia Pacific for 2 years.
Okay. I'm looking at the time and I'm eating up your time. So
Yes.
I'm only going to do one more minute. Okay. We didn't even talk about your philanthropy work yet. So can you quickly give us an elevator pitch of like what you do in that aspect?
Oh my God, Betty. No, thank you. Yeah. So I guess really, but first of all, like the philanthropy part, I think you talked about it earlier. It's like when you hit a certain point in your life and your career, you want to give back. And so right now, where my time goes is like things that I really just love and have so much passion for. So Caring for Cambodia, I'm on the board of Caring for Cambodia, and our mission is to provide education to children in Siem Reap. Right now we have 21 schools, and our focus is teacher development, Vanny. And so along with our 21 schools, we have the Education Development Center that's in Siem Reap. And so we want to be the model, like a model school, right? Like, so other schools from other provinces, principals, teachers, they can come to our Education Development Center in Siem Reap and learn the new teaching methodologies, right? And so being able to build a strong educational system. We also work very closely with the Cambodian Ministry of Education, and we're considered like a model school, for Siem Reap. And so very proud of that. That's been going on for like 22 years. And my husband and I joined the board, I'd say maybe 2-3 years ago. But every year we do an annual gala, and really it's for us as Gon Khmer to give back to Cambodia, like to the future generation, to the, kon kon kamoy kamoy, like our nieces and nephews in Cambodia that would never have a chance to come to America, but yet we want to make sure that they are the future of Cambodia, to build like a really strong, educational foundation. And then the other big cause, Vanny, that I just love serving is Tri-Valley Haven. And so that's more of a local nonprofit right now. I'm currently the board vice president, and we have been operating confidential shelters for women and children fleeing domestic violence. And we've been doing this for 47 years, and we serve mostly our Tri-Valley community, so the cities nearby, Vanny. But, being able to provide a safe refuge for a woman and her children escaping abusive homes, right? Like you're fleeing an abuser, you're dealing with domestic violence, your life is being threatened, you don't know where to go. We operate these confidential shelters. We offer legal services. And so we help these survivors file restraining orders, police reports. We help them to gain healing, right? So as you know, like when you are a victim of domestic violence, I'm sorry, I'm not even going to say victim, a survivor. When you are a survivor of domestic violence, the first thing is you need to be physically safe. After that begins your healing. And so we have trained counselors to help them, and also then to get them to that next point. And so oftentimes when someone, a woman or man, right, we've had men come to our shelters as well, Vanny. Many times the abuser is going to start controlling you, and usually it's financial control. And so a lot of times the families that we help, they come with nothing, not even the clothes on their backs, no financial, because they're locked out of their bank accounts, everything. So that work to me is so important, because it's about like helping women and children during a very, very traumatic, difficult time to get healing in a dignified way, right? Like you don't want that stigma as a woman to, like that stigma of like being, they used to call it battered wives, right? That was like the term that you used back then. Like you don't want that stigma and your identity to be like someone who's like battered, right? And so we have a lot of programs to support them. We have a food pantry, no judgment, no questions asked. You just come, you need help, you need groceries for the week. You just come, we serve. And then we have a homeless shelter, obviously, as you can imagine, like when you're escaping a domestic violence situation, oftentimes, you end up unhoused. So we have that. But, right now, like that's my like biggest thing. And then the other, and I max myself to 3. And the other thing that I just took on right now is like being president of the Women's Council of Realtors, Fanny. And really, I believe that women, we have so much potential. We have so much capabilities and strength and resilience. And being a woman in real estate, like I want to help create this next generation of women in this industry to really like level up and really be truly professionals.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. And kudos on the absolutely amazing work that you do outside of work.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't want to gloss over your real estate career, but can you quickly mention, how did you get involved in real estate from, pharmaceuticals and then IT and now real estate?
Yeah, Vanny. Well, I say I got married into it. My husband, Moni Knopp, he's been a realtor for 18 years after he retired as a Livermore police officer. And he literally dragged me kicking and screaming into real estate. And his thing was like, yeah, just come and like run my operations. You have all this background from Salesforce and CRM and marketing and, partnerships and stuff. He's like, yeah, just come run my back office. And then of course he's like, oh, you should get your license and be able to like also be a husband and wife team. And so now we are a husband and wife team, Vanny. I've been doing this with my husband now for, I'd say 2.5, like 3 years. I'm still a baby, as I say, in real estate, but it's been a great journey. And really it just started from like just leaving Salesforce as a 9-to-5 corporate girly. I call myself a recovering corporate, person. But I left Salesforce as an employee in 2018, I moved to Phnom Penh. I moved to Cambodia to basically start a Salesforce practice there in Phnom Penh. And then I lived in Cambodia for 2 years. So I had that experience. And and then I moved back home and the pandemic happened. And my mom was like, okay, Gon, you have to come home. So Ma was like, come home. I came home, Vanny, and I met my husband. So I told him, I was like, you better thank Ma because she made me come home. Yeah, we met and got married. And now, we have an awesome life. We have a blended family. I don't have any children. And that's another thing too. Like, just focusing on my career and stuff, Annie, that was one of the things. Like I never found time to start a family. I don't have my own children, but I inherited my stepsons. I inherited a step grandson. Wow. So you know what? I am a yay yay. I am a yay. He calls me yay yay. So
oh my goodness.
I'm a proud yay yay, and I love that kid so much, Vanny. He is like my little BFF. I'm his yay yay, and I love it. I love being an auntie, love being a grandma. It's the best.
Also, Pauline, I know we have to go now. Just one last thing. What are 1 or 2 things that you want listeners to take away from your story?
Okay, so if you are listening, and number one, if you're feeling stuck in your career, this is the perfect time to look into reinvention, and ChatGPT is amazing if you want to train it to kind of help guide you. And just don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Don't be afraid of others' judgment, of others' opinions. Everyone in your life, they love you, including your parents, your siblings, your spouse. Everyone loves you. They will always have an opinion, but it is your journey.
Coming from the queen of reinvention.
Your happiness.
Yes.
Coming from the queen of reinvention. And I think the last thing is just like, believe in yourself and believe in your journey and not molding your journey into anyone else's journey. Like, the thief of happiness is comparing yourself. Like, don't ever compare yourself to anyone else's journey. Your journey is special. You are special. And if you forget that, and if you need me to remind you, DM me and I will remind you how special and amazing you are.
Speaking of DMing, if someone wants to buy a house from you, what area do you cover?
Oh my gosh. So my husband and I, we are licensed in California. We are based here in the Bay Area. So San Francisco Bay Area, Tri-Valley. We also do Stockton. I speak Khmer fluently. And so there is nothing more joyous for me than to help a Khmer family buy their first home, sell their home, buy an investment home. And because my years in Cambodia has helped me to really build up my fluency, I often have clients who are actually newly arrived Khmer immigrants. And so I speak Khmer fluently. And I just, serving my clients is just such a joy.
Yeah.
But of course find me on like LinkedIn and Instagram, wherever Vanny is. I'd love to connect.
It'll be in the show notes. And just to make sure everyone knows, your combined experience in real estate, you and your husband, is over 20 years. Is that correct? Or is it close to 20 years?
I would say, yes.
So lots of experience there, plus fluent Khmer, geopolitical background as well. So you're very well versed in not just navigating the nuances of people coming from Cambodia, but like pretty much all of Asia.
Yeah. And Vanny, I just want to say thank you for starting the Khmer Voices podcast. And today I just, again, I hope to provide a little bit of glimmer of just, insights for our own, our younger Khmer Americans. And if you, but Vanny, you are doing such an amazing job. Thank you. Aww. I just want to say, Akon. It takes a lot of courage to start something like this and to amplify the voices of our diaspora. I think you're just incredible, and I love supporting you.
Wong, you know what? It's people like you that are making this podcast possible. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And thank you for your time. I wish I had some more time with you. Well,
we can always come back again. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Akon.
Akon Chanat Mong, Sophaline, for sharing your story and your journey with us, how you're able to navigate career changes. It seems really fitting right now, especially with the economic uncertainty happening. And there's a lot of people right now kind of questioning like, hey, is this really what I want to do? What else can I be doing? And you're such an amazing person for, holy moly, like 3 nonprofits just pouring your time into others. And listeners, if you'd like to check out Mong Sophaline's podcast, it's called Love, Listings, and Legacy. And if you'd like to get in touch with her, I have linked to her Instagram and LinkedIn in the show notes. Well, let me take this opportunity to say Sam Akunchran for coming along with me on this journey. 2025. So I've been podcasting for over a year now. And fun fact, Spotify told me that Kamai Voices is the #1 podcast for 114 listeners on Spotify. Wow! Honestly, I'm humbled and chuffed. I can't believe that, I'm the preferred podcast for 114 people. Wow, thank you. Good. So, I'm only able to do this because I do schedule in breaks. And like I said in the top of the episode, I will be taking a break and coming back mid-January. And if you want to know when, my first episode is in 2026, be sure to follow me on Instagram. It's Kamai Voices as well. I'm on TikTok and LinkedIn, but I think I'm the most active on Instagram. All right. Well, enjoy the holidays and Happy New Year. And I will connect with you again in January 2026.